All right, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Tom Pico, and I'm the president and CEO for the Penobscot Bay Regional Chamber of Commerce. And thank you for joining in this first of our series of 4 Tourism Tuesdays that are a replacement for the Tourism Summit that we have done in many years in the past. So this is our online version of that, and glad to have you join us. So we do have 3 more weeks of presentations coming up, next 3 Tuesdays. So hope you can join us for those as well. But and they're all free of charge, thanks to the sponsorship from First National Bank. And we'll hear from Jake in just a minute. So before we dive into today's topic with the Maine Office of Tourism, I do want to have a couple of quick notes, just as we always do with chamber events. Want to thank our premium members, LCI, Machias Savings Bank, Eaton Peabody, and Ballou and Associates, and we appreciate their additional investment in the chamber. So thank you. And I know there are some folks from some of those entities with us today, so thanks. I did want to point out and remind you that we are continuing to use the 2020 edition of the Jewel of the Maine Coast Guide and have published an addendum to go along with it. And a nice sticker for the front here that tells people that the addendum is inside. So these are available from the chamber now if you want to pick up copies. And that is the print package that we're using this year. So want to make sure that you know that those are available. And I hope you can join us Wednesday, March 31st at 7 p.m. live on our YouTube channel. We'll be doing our online awards event that replaces our annual gala, where we'll present our Community Person of the Year award and other awards that we do typically each year. So again, as I said in the beginning, I want to thank First National Bank for being our sponsor for our Tourism Tuesday series. And I'd like to turn it over to Jake Miller for a brief welcome.
Yes, thank you, Tom, and good afternoon, everybody. We are pleased to sponsor these Tourism Tuesday seminars. It will be different than what we've done in the past with the Tourism Summit, but in some regards, we're hoping that it will capture a lot of people that might not have been able to take a full day to attend the Tourism Summit. Looking ahead, it looks like today's seminar, as well as the futures, look really terrific, and I look to spread the word about this for all of those that are impacted by the hospitality industry, which, as we all know, is one of the biggest industries in Maine. So we are absolutely thrilled to sponsor. And aside from that, I think it would be relevant to point out that First National Bank is a Maine community bank. We're headquartered in Damariscotta, and we make all of our credit decision making on all loans, including commercial loans, in-house. So if you're in need of a loan, or if you want to take advantage of low interest rates, which are occurring right now, in some cases historically low, we would love to be able to talk to you about that in any form or fashion to help you as you navigate the rest of the pandemic. And if you're already one of our customers and you're finding yourself needing some more time or assistance with your loan, also feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to work something out with you. So with that said, I'll turn it back to Tom, and thanks again for having us.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it. So let's move into the topic for today. We are recording today's session, and we'll share it later on our YouTube channel for those who couldn't attend. But if you have questions, you can add them to the chat or just message me in the chat and let me know that you have a question. And after Steve's presentation, I can share questions for him to respond to, or just call on you to ask your own question. But if you're going to ask your own, of course, we ask everybody to be concise so that we can get through as many questions as we can in the hour that we have. Since July of 2017, Steve Lyons, our presenter, has been the director of the Maine Office of Tourism, which is part of the state's Department of Economic and Community Development. Steve's been with the Office of Tourism for over 20 years and served as director of marketing before becoming the overall leader of this state agency. The Maine Office of Tourism manages the state's overall tourism marketing, including the online tourism presence through visitmaine.com and associated social media, and they conduct and report on in-depth tourism market research and oversee a variety of tourism subsectors, including the Maine Film Office, the recently formed Office of Outdoor Recreation, and Cruise Maine. So Steve Lyons, from the Director of the Maine Office of Tourism, thank you very much for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Okay, well, it looks more like a digital floor than a real floor, but that's all right. Glad we could all get together and really happy to be here. Appreciate you inviting me, Tom. I think it's always great to get out and, well, get out to at least talk with people and see what's going on out there in the world. What I'll do is I'm going to jump in. Real excited to be here. I've got a number of things I want to cover with you folks today. Primarily, we're going to look at the Look Out for Maine campaign, which is something we've launched recently. We'll look at what we're planning for the summer campaign, and then Tom asked me to maybe touch on a few maybe statistics or trends for the industry. And so we'll try to squeeze all that into the time that we have here. But I think be able to do that. And so in order to go through this, I am going to switch over to a PowerPoint presentation, and we will share the screen here. Give me 1 second, I will get to it. There we go. Okay. So, again, with the, I'm going to start off by jumping right in with the Look Out for Maine campaign. Look Out for Maine campaign was something that came about, basically because we'd had a lot of issues with more people coming for outdoors and more people coming here to travel to the state. And what was happening is there were a lot of people that were not really outdoor savvy, if you will. And so a number of them were not sure what to do when they got here. Some of them got in over their head. And I'm going to kind of walk through this whole process. With the onset of COVID-19, we saw an influx of visitors migrating to the outdoors. National statistics show that people were buying bicycles, ATVs, snowmobiles, golf clubs, cross-country skis. I mean, essentially there was this run on outdoor equipment because people they wanted to get out, but they wanted to be safe. And so they felt the best place to do that was to be out in the wilderness areas and out in the more rural areas. Many of these people were new to the outdoors and didn't know how to kind of keep themselves safe. And as I said, they're kind of getting it over their head. As a result, we saw more issues with crowding on trailheads and boat launches around the state, and leaving trash behind, and just sort of misusing the land in general. It was really kind of too bad because, the reason people come here, obviously, is the outdoors. That's why they're coming to the state. There are a lot of other great things here, but about 85% of people that come here are actually coming for some, to participate in some outdoor activity. So on top of all that, we also had a report from the Maine Warden Service, who was telling us that they've had more rescues this year than in the past because people were getting in over their heads. And they had this other oddball statistics, I guess, not really odd, but it's really concerning, frankly, that more people were requesting signs for request for permission, access by permission only signs for their property. So what's happening is because their property is getting misused and because they're having issues, they were starting to post their property. And that's a real problem in Maine because in Maine, with more than 90% of the land, the public land, is privately owned. So people, chances are, if you're recreating someplace in Maine, aside from one of the state parks or Acadia National Park, you're probably on someone's private land. And so that's really what the attraction of Maine is. And that's different from some places like out west. Out west, when you go to some of the mountain states, a lot of the land is actually publicly owned. And so to have access to private land is very important. And, we had we have meetings with the outdoor group of people on a regular basis, the sporting camps, the Maine guides, the trails people, Appalachian Mountain Club, and other folks, land trust people. that all sort of said, we're really seeing a problem here, and we would like, is there anything Office of Tourism can do to help? So this is what we came up with, was our sort of Lookout for Maine program. The purpose of this program, this is an integrated media campaign that drives awareness. It's the purpose is to educate people to experience nature in a safe and responsible way. And we want to have them do that for generations to come. So we want to make sure that this land and this property is going to be here for all future visitors as well. So the campaign is designed to reach people who show an interest in outdoor activities, but it's not solely for people who are really outdoor savvy, because those people are pretty much know that you got to pack it in and pack it out. I'm not going to leave garbage behind. Not going to deface the property, or cut the trees up with my knife or whatever. Most of the people know that. So it's really, a lot of this is geared toward the general population, although we do want people who are savvy in the outdoors to follow our rules and regulations, and be reminded that we want to keep this property available for years to come. So looking at the audience targeting, we're looking at adults 18 plus, outdoor enthusiasts primarily. We're going to do contextual targeting, behavioral targeting, proximity targeting, and interest-based targeting as well. We had a soft launch of this program back in November, where we launched the Lookout for Me website, lookoutforme.com, and we added some basic information on that. We're now heading into the second phase, which is this paid media component, where we're going to be doing paid media to get this message more widely spread out there in the community. The other important piece of this is we'd really like to get hotels, restaurants, attractions, retail shops, pretty much everyone else on board, and get this message out, because the more people see something, the more repetition you have, the more likely they are to follow the rules and remember, oh yeah, I got to think about that. I got to think about bringing a map. I got to think about, not washing off my boat so I don't get invasive species spread around. So the more people we can get thinking about that, the better. So the ad campaign that I just mentioned, it's a sort of a paid media campaign primarily, that is going to be covering a lot of different channels. We're doing digital video, audio, native advertising, digital display, social media, and paid search. And the reason we stick with digital is because A, it's very targetable. It's very easy to really hone in on your audience that you're trying to target. And B, you can also make quick changes and quick results. So if something isn't working in one place, let's say digital video wasn't working for whatever reason, and we saw that social media, paid social was doing really well, then we can readjust our budget and move money around to get the get the money to the places that are more likely to drive business. So the campaign is kind of broken into sort of, I guess, two sort of types of creative, I guess is the best way to describe it. We do have some real live imagery, like real photographs of Maine, that will be incorporated in some of this, but there's also going to be an animated campaign as part of this. And so what you're seeing here is some of the animation that we're putting forth out there, and some of the ads that would be held for digital display advertising. That would be available for digital display advertising. So the whole concept here is help preserve today for tomorrow, tips and resources, enjoy safely, because those are really the two main points. Be safe when you're out there, don't get in above your head, and then help preserve the property so that other people can enjoy what you're enjoying today. So that's really what the primary purpose of this is. So we have digital video would be through connected television, and that would be something like, those are live streaming platforms like Hulu, Tubi, Sling, and there are other services as well, but those are some of the outlets. And then we have streaming audio, and that would be like 30-second spots on things like Pandora and Spotify. And then we have sort of a live read spot on NPR, because the National Public Radio audience actually indexes very high with travelers to Maine, and with people who enjoy the outdoors. So we thought that was an important channel to get our message out in as well. We also have behavioral targeting with display ads, and that means we'll be targeting people who have shown an interest in the outdoors through their online browsing habits. So we can sort of see if someone's looking at a lot of outdoor sites, and we can sort of target those people with this message to say, well, you're obviously interested in the outdoors. We'd love to, put this campaign in front of you so you can continue to help us support our natural resources as well. We're also looking at proximity targeting. And what we mean by proximity targeting is that we can put a geofence around, a digital geofence around an area, say Acadia National Park, for example. So when someone crosses over that geofence line, that digital line, we can then present them with a message, one of these messages, and say, here's our recreate responsibly message and travel safely message and that kind of thing. And we can sort of target that by people who are interested in outdoors. So if they get to one of our popular state parks, like Popham Beach is a crazy place in summertime, and the place gets really packed. And I'm sure Camden Hill State Park is really busy, this time of the year. I mean, that time of the year as well. And so we could put geofences around some of these places. So when people cross over that line, we can remind them that, hey, we'd love to have you here. Glad you came, but also, please, keep it neat, pack in, pack it out, and then enjoy our resources really safely as well. What else have we got? So we have some retargeting banners, and the retargeting is really people who had visited select activities on our website, visitmaine.com, like hiking pages, camping, biking, boating, on the water. If people have visited those pages, then obviously they have an interest in the outdoors, and they have an interest in Maine and the outdoors. And so after they visited the site, maybe a few days later or a few weeks later, maybe 30 days later, we can hit them up again and say, hey, keep this message in mind if you do travel to Maine, pack it in, pack it out, stay safe. So all this stuff, that's what's nice about digital targeting. You can just do all these things to keep people informed about what our message is. There are a lot of different sample examples of the retargeting banners. You can see here, there was more based on hiking. There's some biking. There's some on the water type things, paddling and boating. We also have information about invasive species, not bringing your own firewood and making sure you buy local firewood so you're not, spreading pests and those kinds of things. And then we'll have social media as well on Facebook and Instagram. We're looking at about 11 million impressions on those channels through this campaign. And then we'll do targeted social stories. So here's what I was kind of referring to earlier, where you see these are sort of live photos, if you will, as opposed to some of the animation. But we'll have 6-second stories on our social channels, focused on hiking, biking, camping, on the water activities and such. Some will be focused on, and then we'll have animated banners as well, or animated ads as well, that go to talk about private lands and making sure that, when you're on private land, you're on someone else's property, and many other different activities. The native advertising really is, I guess, native, the best way to describe it, I always kind of think it's akin to sort of an advertorial, the old-fashioned advertorial, or not even old-fashioned, I think it's still used, but where essentially it's content that's about a specific topic, and we can target it to websites and such that are specific to that topic. So there might be a hiking website out there, and we can put hiking content on this site, and it's really a paid ad, but it's in the form of a story. And so it looks more like a story, and hopefully people will read through that and really understand the Look Out For Me program more thoroughly. So we're going to do that with a number of different things. Again, you keep seeing the outdoor activities over and over with hiking and camping and paddling, and even boating is something that is obviously very popular in the inland lakes, and well, not to mention sailing and the ocean going vessels as well. So all that is very important, and we can target those channels through our native, target those audiences through our native channels. The additional tactics. This is kind of a three-phased program. Like I said, the first phase was back in November when we launched the website and got put the graphics together. The second phase I just kind of went through just now with our paid advertising campaign. The third phase is going to be more focused on public relations activities and point of purchase activation. So this is where we're going to be looking for local businesses to maybe support what we're doing here. Through we might have small posters, we might have window stickers, point of purchase type, rack cards or something of those nature that we can share with people who can put them in their properties, in their businesses, and have that message be widespread around the state. Because as I said, the more people see it, the more likely they will be to abide by what we're asking them to do. Excuse me, talking too much. Excuse me a second. There. So that's the Look Out for Maine program. So I think it's important to understand that Look Out for Maine program isn't our summer campaign. It's sort of an add-on campaign, and so I'm going to be going over the summer campaign in a minute. I mean, it's really, it doesn't replace the summer campaign. It's only used to address the negative impacts that we're experiencing on our public land, on our private lands and our public lands and our natural resources, to get people to recreate responsibly. And so it, like I said, it's really an add-on program that will continue to, push out there, up until, and again, the toolkit for this, I guess I wanted to mention that, the toolkit for this, if you want to get posters and email blasts and social posts that have already been sort of pre-developed for this, and you'd like to buy into those or use those on your own for your own audiences, you can go to lookoutforme.com, and you can, down at the bottom of the page, you can get to the link for the toolkit, and you can download the resources there and use them on your websites, use them on email, use them on social media, whatever strikes your fancy. And we'd really appreciate it if you could get the word out, because it is really an important part of why people come to the state. And we want to make sure that we can keep having future generations come to the state and enjoy the same outdoors as everybody else. So now we're going to jump into the summer campaign. And I guess I would call this, really, they call it phase one, because it's really the bridge campaign. Up until the governor's Moving Maine Forward announcement on March 5th, we were already planning to do a more comprehensive summer campaign. The campaign was to run in New England and Mid-Atlantic states, and to start out with, we had intended to evaluate other possible markets. It was supposed to start out in the New England and Mid-Atlantic markets, and we were going to evaluate other markets as well as we move forward. That's still all going to happen, but as soon as we heard the announcement from the governor, we knew we had to get some marketing out in the field ASAP, because it's no secret, everyone has been struggling. Businesses have had a very difficult time. There were a lot of restrictions last year, so we had fewer visitors. And so as a result, we decided, well, what can we do quickly? So we extended our winter campaign in the month of March. The governor's announcement came out on the 5th. We had the winter campaign back up and running sort of, I think, the following Monday or Tuesday, just to keep the message out there in front of people. And then I asked the ad agency to come up with a shorter term plan to come up with a campaign for April, because up until governor's announcement, we were still going under the assumption that we weren't exactly sure when we were going to be able to launch the campaign without restrictions. And so it was really scheduled to start in May or June, when we thought we would have more states available to, being waived from the restrictions. So essentially what happened is we did a quick turnaround. We used the creative that we had from previous year, and we developed a bridge campaign that is going to run in April, beginning about April 12th and running through about the 23rd, 24th, somewhere in that I'll call it late May. And so I wanted to just kind of walk through this campaign as well. The media strategy here is not all that different, I guess, than the one that I mentioned for Lookout for Maine, but this is to raise awareness and consideration for travel to the state of Maine during the summer season. As I indicated before, the week of this bridge campaign is really April 12th through May 23rd. Our audience is travel intenders, and the geographic target are the markets, are the states you see here, New England, Mid-Atlantic. And what's good about this is that, you know, last year, obviously, we only had limited New England states, and then New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey were part of that. This campaign is going to be launched in all the New England states and all in the Mid-Atlantic states. And so there are a number of states like Delaware, Virginia, DC, and Maryland where we weren't advertising last year, and this campaign is going to be hitting those markets in this bridge campaign, and we will continue that into the summer. As I indicated with a Lookout for Me program, this is a digital campaign primarily, again, so we can be, you know, we can move things around as necessary. It's important to be able to, you know, look at these things as you go, look at the different channels as you go, and determine what's working and what isn't. Let's get on. Now I'm going to get on to the creative. First thing we have to do, and this is really kind of not a great slide, but essentially what we have to do is update visitmaine.com to represent all the appropriate states that are now open. So we'll be doing that as one of our initial, well, actually we've already done that, for the states that can come. The campaign, as I said before, really is going to be picking up on the creative assets that we developed for the Maine bicentennial campaign that never actually ran because 2020 was sidetracked by COVID. So the campaign creative is still fairly fresh, hasn't really been seen by that many people. The bicentennial campaign actually had a little 200 in the middle of these things, but wouldn't be appropriate now. So what I'll do is I'm going to run a video as well. The video we picked up was a video that we did run last year. This was a video that ran actually in Vermont and New Hampshire when we were advertising to those two states. But it was still made sense to, you know, it still made sense for the new audiences as well, for all of New England and the Mid-Atlantic states. So this video is really what we're going to be starting to run on our connected television beginning in April.
The majestic coastline and pristine beaches of Maine call it. The secluded trails and immense natural beauty of Acadia are calling. It's time to discover the diverse landscapes of Maine for yourself. So when you're ready to explore everything that is Maine, deeply Maine, we're ready to welcome you back. Start planning your getaway at visitmaine.com.
So that's a 30-second spot that will be on connected TV, as I said, with streaming television, and that'll be targeting those. Well, I mentioned all like Hulu and all the different ones that I mentioned before. On top of that, we have digital display advertising. Again, you're going to see a focus on the out of doors for the most part, although it's not exclusively outdoors. But since you know, the things that people are looking for right now are outdoor activities. They want to go to national parks and state parks. So as you probably noticed, maybe Acadia was mentioned in that last video because it is such a huge attraction for people. And oftentimes people will stop and go other places in the state en route to Acadia National Park. But it is kind of a distinguishing feature that, you know, they have that national park in the Northeast because you don't really find many national parks in the Northeast. So we'll have digital display advertising as well. And then we'll be doing retargeting displays on top of that. And as you can see here, we're looking at, again, outdoor activities, but we have thrown in lobster and we have thrown in lodging into this one. So we are trying to look at getting people to stay overnight. Obviously, that's one of our major goals. We want to get people in the restaurants to eating, and we want them to get in the retail shops to purchase goods. That's what's going to help all the small businesses come back and start recovering from where they were last year. We have a number of paid social posts, And we did an ad effectiveness campaign with a limited campaign we did last year that showed that our paid social did very well. So when we put paid social posts out there, we had a pretty good response rate to those. There are a number of campaigns that will be going to, they'll be directed to different parts and different pages on visitmaine.com. This particular post shows that it's going to the trip ideas about lighthouses, but there are many others as well. I'm just going to flip through these fairly quickly. We have some animated posts that, on hiking, for canoeing, all the things that I sort of mentioned before, canoeing and on the water, beaches, trip ideas again, because the trip ideas on visitmaine.com are a group of different things you can do. There are garden tours, lighthouse tours, outdoor activities, cultural activities, those kinds of things. So I get ahead of myself. So I jumped along that, and so that's a very brief overview of the summer campaign. As I said, we are planning a full-blown campaign. So there'll be, our ad agency is working on that right now, where they're going to be developing, a whole new, I think it's going to be sort of a version of this creative, but it's going to be developing new creative and new messaging that will really start for the campaign in June, when we start the summer campaign, or when we continue the summer campaign with a new assets. And at that point, the campaign will likely run right through the fall, and then we'll jump into our winter campaign as well. So that's kind of an overview of the campaign. And as you saw, I jumped ahead a little quickly. Tom had also asked briefly if I could maybe touch on a few of the statistics or metrics that we're seeing. And so I pulled a few stats from the U.S. Travel Association. Looks like their forecast, and what this is the forecast for visitation, they call person trips, but it's visitation for the next few years. And I guess I cut off the dates on here, but this would have been, this 2318 would have been 2019. This 1600 was trips in 2020. The 1905 is what they project for 2021. 2272 is projected for 2022. This is 2023 projection and 2024 projection. So if you look at where we were in 2019, which is actually starting out to be a very strong year, January and February were actually very good in 2020. But if you look at 2019, we had 2.3 million. No, I'm sorry. This is person trips throughout the whole country. So this is like, so we're going to be, well, what am I trying to say? By 2020, since I lost, so I apologize, I'm confused because I forgot, I took my dates off here and now I'm confused. So 2020, 21, 22. So by 23, we were going to be recovering back to 2019 levels. That's what I was trying to get. So obviously I made a mistake when I put that graphic together. But so the prediction from the U.S. Travel Association and their forecasting is that, yeah, we'll see some growth over the next couple of years, but it really won't be until 2023 before we start to get back to the levels that we saw for visitation in 2019. Here's another graphic looking at visitor spending. And this is a spending forecast from the U.S. Travel Association. And you can see it's kind of similar here. The blue line represents total travel spending, and this is nationwide. This isn't, just in Maine. The pink is the pink or red, whatever color you want to call that, is really domestic travel. The green is international travel. So you can see that in 2020 things were fairly low, at the very beginning of this graph, and then you're looking at excuse me, things increasing a little by little over the next 4 years. And you'll see the international is going to be recovering a little more slowly than domestic travel. So again, by this projection, based on what the U.S. Travel Association is predicting, and this report was put together back at in the end of the fall of last year. So they may update it once everyone's got their vaccinations and such. But you'll see that we're just getting back to, if you look at the red line on the 2024 graph over here, you'll see that we're just getting back 100% is where we were at in 2019. So we're just going to be hitting that with domestic travel, according to the U.S. Travel Association. In 2019, we'll be a little behind in international travel, and hopefully international travel will recover the following year. So that's kind of how to read that graphic. And then Destination Analysts is a national marketing research firm that focuses on tourism. And they put a graphic, they've been doing what they call their sentiment index since March of last year. And so they've been asking sort of the same questions of everybody throughout the entire pandemic. And so one of the questions they were asking said, even if only tentatively scheduled, in which months do you currently plan to take any leisure trips? And you'll see here that most people are planning on taking their leisure trips in the summer months. And that's really not that unusual. It's pretty much the same curve that we always see in Maine every year. Summer is always the busiest month, and then fall, then winter. But this just gives you a sense of the percentage of people that intend to travel during various months of the year. And what you'll see at the very end, you'll say about 10% of the people are right now saying they're going to put their travel off until 2022. So to me, what that means, if you say if only 10% are putting it off until 2022, in my mind, that means 90% are planning on traveling this year, and hopefully that's good for the Office of Tourism and for the state of Maine. So that's kind of a summary of some real quick graphics, and we can jump into questions here. But before I do that, I also want to give you a reminder that we are planning to host the Governor's Conference on Tourism this year. It's going to be May 3rd through the 5th, and it's going to be a virtual conference, so it'll be on Zoom. There's no registration fee, so you're certainly all welcome to join. And Monday, the first day is Monday the 3rd. That's really kind of just a day for a couple of the groups to get together. We're going to have a wedding industry workshop. At least that's what's scheduled right now, assuming all these things come together. And then Community Destination Academy workshop. And what that is Donna Moreland in our office has been doing destination development work, and she's been working with various communities around the state. She's worked in Moosehead Lake region, Bethel, and Rangeley, and she's looking at other destinations in the future. Pardon me. She'll be talking about best practices that they've come up with as a result of these programs. Then on the 4th and the 5th, Tuesday and Wednesday, the conference will run from about 9 in the morning until about 1 in the afternoon. We'll have an Office of Tourism report, which will go over some of the stuff that I just went over here. We'll have obviously the more current campaign done by then, so we'll be able to show you what's going on from that point forward. And then we'll have national keynote speakers, we'll have breakout sessions, we'll have networking sessions, and all of that's going to be done virtually. So we are planning on doing it. We invite you all to join us. Information will be posted on MaineTourismConference.com's website, so keep tabs on that. And that's all I have for my visual presentation. I will now try to get out of, now I've got to figure out how to stop sharing my screen. There it is. My menu disappeared for a minute. Okay. Super. So now I'll try to answer some questions that you might have.
Well, thank you, Steve. That's a lot of great information. I will, if you have questions, either you can post your question in the chat or just send me a message in the chat that you'd like to ask a question on your own, and I'll acknowledge you to try to keep some order to this here. And of course, as I said before, you know, if you're going to ask a question directly, just try to keep it succinct so that we can get through as many as possible. But you know, and it's any question about the work of the Maine Office of Tourism. It doesn't have to be specific to what we heard today from Steve. So Steve, I just wanted to, I'll start, and I'm already seeing one question in here that I'll get to in a minute, but last week the legislature passed I think it was a resolution basically to hold over some funding from last year for the Office of Tourism to make sure that tourism promotion funding from the state is whole this year. So maybe just briefly give an overview of how do you typically, how is the Office of Tourism funded and why that was important to have that kept whole this year. So.
Sure, yeah. Well, the Office of Tourism is funded as a percentage of lodging and meals tax. So, and anyone spending money on lodging and meals tax, we get 5% of the lodging and meals tax. The rest of the other 95% of that money that's generated through the lodging and meals tax actually goes to the general fund for other services. But the 5% we use for our tourism marketing budget. And what Tom's referring to is there was a resolution that was passed in the legislature, LD 246. And basically what it said was the Office of Tourism had some money left over, or will have some money left over this fiscal year, because given the restrictions, we didn't spend all of our money. You can only spend so much money before you're sending good money after bad. And so what happened was we're going to end up with, I don't know, $2 or $3 million, maybe $3 or $4 million left over that didn't get spent because we couldn't do a full-blown campaign last year since we were only advertising in the states that were unrestricted at the time. And so sometimes in the legislature, historically, what happens is at the end of the year, if money is unused, it gets swept and gets put back into the general fund so they can fund other projects and such. So this resolution was aimed at keeping the money in the tourism budget so we can keep that $3 or $4 million that was left over from last year and put it towards our campaign in 2020 and the upcoming campaign. So that's what that was all about.
Yep, great. Thanks. I'm going to, we have a question from David Troop from the Farnsworth Art Museum. So I'll turn it over to David.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks so much, Steve. I really appreciate the presentation. It was very, very interesting to see the statistics and see what the Maine Office of Tourism is planning this year. I just had a quick question. I fully understand why your priorities with advertising this year would focus primarily on the outdoors, being that people are certainly wanting to get out and wanting to explore in a safe environment. But with so many surveys and so many reports showing how museums are possibly the safest environment of all the indoor activities for people in our current environment with COVID. Are there any plans to do any cultural advertising, as the state of Maine has done in the past in a wonderful manner? Actually, I'm hoping to see some cultural tourism this year as well to promote. I mean, the Mid-Coast has such incredible cultural resources and is one of the prime attractions for this area. So I'm wondering what the state has in plan for that specific aspect. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Now, I mean, when we're looking at the statistics, cultural tourism is an important part of tourism in the state. One of the challenges we were facing when we were doing this initial planning was that with all the indoor restrictions and the capacity limits, and it was difficult to come up with a campaign to drive a lot of visitation that way. But with that said, we do plan on developing a cultural tourism component of what we're presenting this summer. It's just going to be in the next iteration. As I said, the reason we had to sort of quickly with this bridge campaign that I was just talking about, we had to really kind of quickly get it up with the assets we had at hand, with the ads that we had done before. But we do want to include cultural tourism as well moving forward in this campaign. And we do, we still work with Abby Levin, who's our cultural tourism coordinator, who keeps us up to speed on. She's very active in helping us develop itineraries for the cultural sector, for our website. And helping us, understand the products that are out there, and she's really great for helping us sort of identify, what's strong in the cultural sector.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. Next up, I want to recognize David Gogel from Rockland Main Street, who has a question.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Steve. That was a great presentation. I specifically want to cue in on one thing. It seemed like there was a lot of work done around sustainable tourism, and I was just curious, are there any other kind of campaigns that you all are thinking about related to that? How are you thinking about extending that to the other kind of marketing efforts from the Office of Tourism? It seems like that's clearly something you all have spent a bunch of time in, and I would be interested to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, this Lookout for Maine is kind of our first foray into this sort of sustainable tourism component. And as I said, we're kind of learning as we go. This is going to be an ever evolving program. So we've been working very closely with, each week we have meetings with the outdoor sector, and that's a group of people from the Maine Professional Guide Association, the Sporting Camp Association, the Maine Trail. I think maybe I mentioned all this earlier. A whole bunch of different outdoor groups that we meet with on a regular basis. Actually, it's a meeting with the Maine Office of Outdoor Recreation, which Caroline Willett runs, but I usually try to sit in on them when I can. So we're taking a lot of input from those folks as to what they think is appropriate, and we're going to be evolving the campaign as we get that information. But it's so new right now, I can't tell you exactly where it's going, because it's going to be based on the need and what and what we hear from that group. But we do intend to keep this campaign running for quite some time, because it really is, what an important aspect of what makes Maine an attractive destination.
Thanks. Robin McIntosh from the Sail Power and Steam Museum in Rockland had posted a question in the chat, and I'll just paraphrase. Hannah posted a response. Thank you, Hannah. But Steve, maybe you'll want to comment on it as well, relating to cruise tourism. As I think many of us know, Canada has extended their ban on cruise ships into 2022, which likely means that larger cruise ships will largely not be visiting Maine, because those itineraries often include New England and Atlantic Canada. But here in Camden and Rockland and other areas on the coast, American Cruise Lines runs their small vessels, and just wondering if you have any update on whether there will be an opportunity for American Cruise Line visits to the Maine coast this summer.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've been working on for quite some time. The Cruise Maine is working with the governor's office and the Maine CDC to evaluate the requirements for cruise ships. Right now, as it stands, the small ships, while they're exempt from the overall CDC requirements, there still haven't been guidelines that have come forth on the state level from the Maine CDC. And so at this point, American Cruise Line, we're not sailing right now, but I know I think we're getting close with American Cruise Line, but it is something that's being worked on. And I don't really have a better answer than that, other than it's in discussion with the CDC and the governor's office to get those bans or those cruise restrictions lifted on the small cruise ships. And as Tom pointed out, I mean, with I don't know how familiar everybody is with the Jones Act, but essentially you've got large cruise ships. When Canada came out and said, we're banning all cruise ships or suspending all cruise ship visits, that kind of hit Maine on the larger cruise ships, because by the Jones Act is a federal law that basically says if you're a foreign flag ship, which is pretty much almost every large vessel that comes into the United States, you have to go to at least one port outside the United States during your journey. And most people are going up to Canada, but now since they can't do that anymore, they're really essentially not allowed to sail. I know that the state of Alaska, some of their congressional delegation was trying to put forth some legislation to allow travel in Alaska, because they were running into the same thing. And I'm not sure where that ended up exactly, but I know it's an issue that we're watching. We're hoping that Canada changes their policies in the near future, but not something we have a lot of control over, unfortunately.
Do you have, it's probably too soon to tell, but do you have any sense about motor coach travel, and has there been any increased inquiry or activity through, and maybe Hannah can speak to this too, I don't know, but about just through the Maine Motor Coach Network, or is that something that might return in some fashion this year, or is that probably a little far off?
Well, I'll start. I don't know if Hannah has anything to add to this, but Chiara Morricone, who's our sort of our motor coach group tour person, I was just talking with her the other day, and she said what she's seeing as a trend is a lot of smaller trips. So instead of the 55 passenger full motor coach, you're starting to see smaller groups coming, and so that does a couple of things. A, it gives you perhaps more groups. B, it maybe allows some of those groups to get to places they normally couldn't go, that couldn't accommodate a full motor coach. So she said she's getting a lot of inquiries about trips for smaller groups of people. So instead of 55, it's more like 20 or something like that. So that is one trend that we're seeing. I don't know if you've heard anything else, Hannah, beyond that in any of your discussions.
No, that's pretty much the latest update that I did get from Chiara, but I know she has been this whole time she's been making contact, doing virtual sales missions, virtual tours, virtual meetings with group tour. So I think the group tour industry is very much excited to come back to Maine, and how that looks, we're not sure, but yeah, expect the groups to be a little smaller at first, which is an exciting opportunity for some places that maybe couldn't accommodate a motor coach of 55 people before. So there's some opportunity there to grow in the group tour business for Maine for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Chiara has been actually still attending virtually the American Bus Association, National Tour Association, and those types of meetings. So we are keeping the relationships going. So when people are ready to get out there and ready to travel, we should be ready for them to come.
Mm-hmm. So, do you? We have 8 minutes left here before 2 o'clock, so I'll just put out another call for anybody else who might have questions. Feel free to post them in the chat or shoot me a message. But Steve, do you? I'm catching you cold on this, so I apologize if you don't have the answer at your fingertips. But are you with the governor's announcement for the Moving Maine Forward plan a couple of weeks ago now? Have you seen any uptick in website activity or social media engagement or that kind of thing? I mean, is the word getting out? Are people realizing that maybe it's a little easier to come to Maine this summer than it might have been in the past?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing from the industry when I talk to the hospitality sector, they were saying just this morning, I was on a call with Tourism Association, Hospitality Maine, campground owners, etc., and they were all basically saying that their reservations have picked up pretty substantially. I think people are still, their advanced reservations are definitely climbing, and it looks like it's going to be strong. And the trend we've seen over the last, year, essentially, because of COVID, is that people have been booking in so close. It was really kind of difficult to really do projections for business because, people would look up for information and then book within 2 weeks or something like that and come because of COVID. I think we're going to see that. There'll still be last minute booking. I think the booking window has been shrinking over the years, but I do think that the reservations are looking up based on what the statewide associations are telling me, and I think it's going to be a strong year. I think there's a pent up demand out there, and people are really going to want to travel. So, looking forward to hopefully keep our fingers crossed a good year.
Yep. Well, and as they've identified, I think Maine has a potential competitive advantage for being a good social distancing destination for people to feel safe and enjoy what we have to offer here for sure. So I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I think we're going to call it good here for today. I want to thank you again, Steve, for taking the time to be with us, and we have recorded this too, so we'll share this out for anybody who wasn't able to make it. Next Tuesday at 9 a.m. we're actually going to talk with Walter Briggs, who I think is on with us today, and Dave Page from CD&M Communications in Portland, and they are the grant manager for the Maine's Mid-Coast and Islands Tourism Region, which actually is funded in large part by the Maine Office of Tourism. So we will hear a little bit more about how how Maine Office of Tourism funds are used in a targeted way to promote the mid-coast too. So looking forward to that. So hope you can all join us. Thanks again to First National Bank for sponsoring this series. And thanks again, Steve, for being with us. Have a great day, everybody.
My pleasure. Thank you.